My husband went to the post office every Friday at exactly 3:15 in the afternoon. Not 3:10, not 3:20, 3:15 on the dot. For 35 years of marriage, he never missed it. Like clockwork, like breathing, like some invisible ritual that mattered more than weddings, birthdays, or grandchildren's recitals. If anything ran late on a Friday, Mark would check his watch, make an excuse, and disappear. Always the same gray jacket with frayed cuffs. Always the same chipped travel mug of black coffee. Always the same line at the same counter. When I asked why, he would kiss my forehead and say, "Just making sure our future is safe, Laura. Somebody's got to stay on top of the boring stuff." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Mark was an insurance guy. Policies and premiums were his playground. He loved spreadsheets more than small talk. Our bills were always paid. The lights never got cut off. We went on modest vacations. He told me our retirement was on track, our mortgage under control, and that I was too kind to be stressed with numbers. So I let him have his Fridays. I let him have the numbers, and I let myself believe that meant security. The day he died, I was in the garden pulling weeds. It was a Thursday, warm, bright, the kind of day that makes you forget bad things can happen under blue skies. My phone buzzed. It was Daniel, my son. His voice sounded wrong the second he said my name. Flat, held together the way you hold a cracked vase. "Mom, you need to come to County General." Dad collapsed at the bus stop. They're working on him. I don't remember the drive. Just the smell of antiseptic, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, and the look on Daniel's face when he met me in the hallway. By the time I got there, they weren't working on him anymore. Massive stroke, the doctor said. Quick. I doubt he felt much. Everyone called it a mercy. I didn't cry at the funeral. People whispered that I was in shock, that the grief would hit later. But the truth was stranger. Somewhere under the numbness, under the casseroles and sympathy cards, I felt something I hadn't expected. A long, low exhale. Not happiness, not celebration, just relief, like I'd been carrying a heavy suitcase for years, and suddenly my body decided to set it down. I didn't understand why I felt that way. What had I been holding? What was I afraid of? If you're listening to this and you've ever felt a strange relief you couldn't explain, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Which city holds your secrets? I want to know I'm not the only one who ignored the signs. And if you're a woman who's ever trusted the boring stuff to someone else, subscribe and stay with me. I'm about to show you what I found when I finally opened his Fridays. 3 days after the funeral, an envelope arrived. Plain white, no return address. Just my name printed in block letters. Laura Jenkins. Inside was a letter from Safekeep Storage and Mail Center. "We are sorry to hear about the passing of Mr. Mark Jenkins. As the secondary holder listed on his private mailbox and storage unit rental, you are entitled to access Unit 3F27. Fees are paid through the end of the year." I read it twice, then 3 times. Private mailbox? Storage unit? Secondary holder? I had never heard of Safekeep, never signed papers, never seen a bill, and yet my name had been on file there for years. Friday, 3:15. The post office trips. The boring stuff. Apparently, there was somewhere else he'd been going. Somewhere I didn't know about. Somewhere he'd never mentioned in 35 years. "Do you want me to come with you?" Daniel asked that night. He had Mark's tired eyes, the same dark circles when stressed. "No," I said. "Whatever he hid there, he hid from me. I need to see it alone first." I didn't sleep much before the appointment. My brain replayed 35 years of Fridays. What was in that unit? Another woman? Gambling debts? Cash hidden for some secret plan? Or worse, nothing. No explanation at all. Just boxes of old junk. Thursday morning, I got dressed with the same care I used for job interviews. Navy blazer, white blouse, pressed slacks, low heels. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. These weren't morning clothes. This was armor. I drove to see what, exactly, my husband had been protecting for our future. Safekeep looked nothing like I'd imagined. No rusty fences or peeling paint. It was sleek, modern. Glass doors, bright lobby, soft music from hidden speakers. A young woman behind the desk smiled when I walked in. "Mrs. Jenkins, I'm so sorry for your loss." Mr. Jenkins was always so polite. "Let me take you back." We walked down a long hallway that smelled of metal and disinfectant. Walls lined with small gray doors, each numbered. We stopped at 3F27. "You'll need to turn yours at the same time," she said, handing me a brass key and inserting hers into the top lock. 2 keys, 2 locks, 2 lives. We turned them together. The door rolled up with a clatter. Inside was not furniture or old Christmas decorations. It was files, stacks of paper. 4 plastic bins, 3 metal lockboxes, 1 cardboard banker's box labeled in Mark's handwriting, house, loans, contingency. My stomach dropped. "I'll give you privacy," she said softly. "There's a viewing room down the hall." I dragged the boxes into the small room. Metal table, 2 folding chairs, buzzing overhead light. I closed the door and sat down, staring at those boxes. 35 years of Fridays, condensed into paper. I opened the first bin. Notebooks, bank statements, red stamps across pages, past due, final notice, account suspended. But these weren't our accounts. These were lenders I'd never heard of. Online companies, credit cards with unfamiliar logos, lines of credit with limits that made my stomach turn. When had he opened these? Why? The second bin was worse. Mortgage documents, thick stacks bound with rubber bands. But not our original mortgage. These were home equity loans. 3 of them. 3 separate loans against our house. The 3-bedroom brick house with blue shutters I'd painted myself. The house where we'd raised our kids, where I'd rocked my grandbabies. The house I thought was ours, free and clear. Mark had used it like an ATM with a cracked bottom. Each document had both our names typed at the top. Mr. Mark Jenkins and Mrs. Laura Jenkins. Co-borrowers, joint applicants. But the signatures at the bottom? Mine looked wrong. Too smooth, too fast. Like someone had traced my name until they could fake it in their sleep. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Credit cards I'd never seen, opened in my name. Lines of credit I'd never approved. Account after account tied to my social security number without my knowledge. I pulled out more folders. Investment fund Horizon Tech, bridge loan private party, emergency cover shortfalls, page after page of losses. Money poured into a tech startup that went under. A private loan to a friend who disappeared. Emergency payments shuffling between accounts to hide the bleeding. The boring stuff wasn't saving our future. It was trying to patch a hole he kept cutting deeper. My hands moved faster, pulling documents, trying to understand the full scope. How much was gone? How much did we owe? How deep did this go? At the bottom of the banker's box, under certified letters wrapped in a rubber band, I found something different. A cream-colored envelope, expensive paper, my name written in blue ink. Laura. Mark's handwriting, his real handwriting. I stared at it, my hands trembling. Part of me didn't want to open it, didn't want to hear his voice explain the unexplainable, but I needed to know. When I walked out an hour later, the receptionist's kind eyes met mine. "Are you all right, Mrs. Jenkins?" "No," I said. My voice surprised me. Steady, calm, almost cold, but I will be. I need copies of everything in that unit. Every page, every document. And I need a list of every company that sent mail here in the last 5 years. She blinked, then nodded. "I'll print it myself." For the first time in 35 years, I didn't let someone else handle it. By the time I got home with 3 boxes of copied documents, the sun was setting. Daniel's car was in the driveway. He met me at the door, worry written across his face. "Mom, I've been going through Dad's files at the house, his office files. Some of this doesn't make sense. Account numbers I don't recognize. Banks we don't use." "I know," I said quietly. "Sit down." I spread the safekeep documents across the kitchen table, page after page. Daniel's face went pale as his eyes scanned the papers. "Mom," he whispered, "this is bad, really bad. I know. The house, your retirement, your credit. It's all here. All of it tied up in this mess." He looked up at me. "How are you so calm?" I wasn't calm. Inside, everything was boiling. Rage, fear, grief, betrayal. But panic wouldn't rewrite a single forged signature. Screaming wouldn't bring back the money. "Because panic is what got us here," I said. "Your father kept borrowing time instead of telling the truth. I won't repeat his mistake. So what do? We find a lawyer." The next morning, we sat in Angela Ruiz's office. Second floor of an old downtown building with creaky wooden floors and tall windows. Her desk was covered in binders, sticky notes, and coffee mugs. The whole room smelled like paper, coffee, and determination. I laid everything on her desk. The safekeep copies, the forged signatures, the home equity loans, the credit cards, all of it. Angela read in silence, making notes with a green pen. When she looked up, her eyes were sharp. "Mrs. Jenkins, I'm going to use a phrase that might be hard to hear. Are you ready? Say it. This is spousal financial abuse. Your husband didn't just make bad decisions or gamble poorly. He systematically hid information. Forged your signature on legal documents, opened accounts in your name without consent, used your credit to cover his losses without your knowledge. That's not being bad with money. That's fraud, and it's a form of domestic abuse. The word hung between us. Abuse. People picture bruises when they hear that word. Black eyes, police reports. They don't picture bank statements. They don't picture forged signatures and storage units and Friday rituals nobody questions. But suddenly, years of conversations clicked into place. You wouldn't understand this policy stuff. It's complicated. You'll just worry. Let me carry it. It's easier if one person runs the finances. You're too kind to deal with this boring stuff. Control disguised as care. Secrecy framed as protection. What can we do? I asked. Angela leaned forward. We start by proving you weren't involved. Step 1, we get a handwriting expert to analyze the signatures. Step 2, we challenge every forged loan. Step 3, we contact credit bureaus and dispute every fraudulent account. Step 4, we push back on lenders who approved loans without proper verification. She paused. But Mrs. Jenkins, this will be a fight. A long one. 6 months to a year, maybe more. And it will cost money you probably don't have. I thought of the empty retirement accounts. The $412 in my checking. Then I thought of what Mark had done. He'd gambled with our entire future because he couldn't admit he'd made a mistake. I was long past disappointed. Tell me what we have to do. We spent the next hour building strategy. Gather every document. Build a timeline. Contact lenders. File disputes. Prepare for court if necessary. For the first time since Mark died, I had direction. Something to fight for. That night, my daughter Emily called. She'd been quiet since the funeral. Distant. She and Mark had always been close. Same dark humor, same love of puzzles. She was his little girl, even at 38. I told her what we'd found. I tried to be gentle, but there's no soft way to say your father committed fraud. Silence stretched so long I thought the call dropped. Mom, she finally said, voice small. Are you sure? Maybe you're misreading it. Maybe there's context you're missing. I have the documents, Em. I have his handwriting. I have proof. But Dad loved you. He loved us. He worked so hard. He wouldn't lie like that. He did both, I said softly. He loved us, and he did this. Both things can be true. She exhaled sharply. I can't talk about this. I can't listen to you tear down his memory. Maybe grief is making you see things that aren't there. Em, please, I have to go. The line went dead. An hour later, Daniel texted. Emily called me sobbing. She thinks you're wrong. Give her time. I understood what Emily was feeling. The desperate need to protect the version of her father that made sense. Accepting the truth meant accepting that people you love can hurt you. That good fathers can make terrible choices. That love and betrayal can exist in the same person. I had lived inside that contradiction for 35 years without knowing it. Emily was just getting started. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Mark's letter, still sealed in my purse. I'd been too overwhelmed at safekeep to process it fully. Now, in the quiet darkness of our bedroom, his bedroom, the room where we'd shared 35 years of nights, I finally opened it again. I thought the worst part would be the forgeries, the debts, the lies to lenders and banks. I was wrong. The worst part was reading his words and realizing what his choices were about to do to my own children. At the bottom of that banker's box, there had been an envelope with my name on it. I'd opened it at safekeep, but now, alone in the darkness, I read it again. Slower this time. If you're reading this, it means I pushed my luck too far, and my Fridays caught up with me. I'm sorry, Laura. I know those words don't fix anything. I know they don't undo what I've done, but I need you to know I never meant for it to go this far. 5 years ago, I made an investment I was sure would fix everything. A friend from college had a tech startup. He needed capital. He promised returns that seemed too good to pass up. I thought I was being smart, securing our future. Instead, I lost everything. Not just my money. Our money. Money I'd borrowed against the house. Money from retirement accounts. Money from places you didn't even know existed. Every Friday, I drove to Safekeep to reshuffle balances, hide late notices before they reached our mailbox, move money around so you wouldn't see how bad it was. The house loans, the credit cards, the lines opened in your name. I justified it all as buying time. Just a little more time to fix it before you had to know. I thought I'd fix it before you read this. I didn't. By the time you're reading this, we may be headed for foreclosure. Your credit might be destroyed because of choices I made without asking you, without telling you. without giving you a voice in your own life, you'll think I'm a coward. You'll be right. I loved you, Laura. That part was always true. But I told myself I was protecting you when really I was protecting myself. From your disappointment, from your anger, from the look in your eyes when you realized I wasn't the man I pretended to be. I'm sorry. It's not enough, but it's all I have left. Mark. I folded the letter and set it on the nightstand. The grief that hit me wasn't soft or aching. It was sharp, cold, like standing barefoot on broken glass. Like waking up and realizing the ground you've been walking on for 35 years was never solid. He hadn't just made mistakes. He'd systematically used my name, my identity, my credit, my future as bandages for wounds he kept cutting deeper. And he'd done it in silence, every Friday for 5 years. The next week blurred into phone calls and paperwork. Angela filed disputes with credit bureaus. We hired a handwriting expert who confirmed what my gut already knew. The signatures weren't mine. 2 credit card companies backed down quickly. Upon review, we see the signature doesn't match Mrs. Jenkins's historical signature. We'll remove this debt and correct the credit report. Small victories, tiny islands in a sea of red ink. But the bank holding our home equity loans fought back. Their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit, argued that as Mark's spouse, I'd benefited from the funds even if I hadn't signed. You lived in the house, didn't you? He said in a meeting, smiling. You enjoyed the lifestyle those loans supported. I stared at him. What lifestyle? I shop at discount stores. We drove a 10-year-old car. I clip coupons. He shrugged. Money is fungible, Mrs. Jenkins. Once it enters the household, it's all mixed. We'll see you in court, Angela said. The court date landed 7 months after Mark's death. The courtroom was smaller than ones on TV, no dramatic woodwork, just tired benches and fluorescent lights. The bank's lawyer spoke first, framing the loans as standard practice, our house as a shared marital asset, me as a co-beneficiary of funds that, while mishandled, nonetheless supported the household. A lot of words to say she's married to him, so she can pay for what he did. Then Angela stood. She didn't raise her voice. She just laid out the pattern. Your Honor, you'll see a history of financial control. Mr. Jenkins managed all accounts, intercepted all mail, used a private mailbox his wife never knew existed. He forged her signature on high-risk loans. He opened credit lines in her name. He wrote a letter admitting he hid everything from her. She called the handwriting expert who testified the signatures were highly unlikely to be mine. Then she called me. Mrs. Jenkins, when did you first learn about these loans? The week after my husband's funeral. In 35 years, did he ever tell you he was borrowing against your home? No. Did you sign these documents? No. Did you receive any funds? See deposit slips? Accounts with your name? No. The money went into accounts I didn't know existed to cover losses I didn't know about. The bank's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Jenkins, you trusted your husband with finances, correct? Yes. So you chose not to involve yourself in financial decisions? I looked at him straight on. I chose to trust the man I married. That is not the same as choosing to be defrauded. He shifted, annoyed. But you lived in the home. You benefited. I lived in the home I helped pay for with my salary for years. The home I thought was our safety net. I did not benefit from loans I never agreed to that nearly took that home away. You expect the court to believe you never suspected anything in 35 years? That question echoed in my head. Was I naive? Yes. Did that make this my fault? My husband was good at pretending everything was fine, I said quietly. Bills were paid. Lights stayed on. He told me stress would hurt my health, so he protected me from details. He hid his mistakes in the spaces where I trusted him most. My ignorance was his design. The courtroom was silent. After closing statements, the judge called a recess. Daniel paced the hallway. Angela checked emails. I sat on a hard bench studying the scuffed floor. We have a strong case, Angela said, but courts are sometimes hesitant to separate spouses from debts. I know, but someone has to say this counts, that this kind of betrayal is real. When we filed back in, the judge looked up. I've reviewed the evidence, the forged signatures, the expert testimony, the decedent's written admission of fraud and concealment. He looked at the bank's lawyer. While I understand the institution's desire to recoup funds, I cannot hold Mrs. Jenkins liable for debts created through identity fraud she neither authorized nor benefited from. He turned to me. I rule in favor of the defendant. The home equity loans are voided. Liens on the property are released. I'm recommending this matter be referred to regulatory agencies for review of the lender's approval practices. For the first time in months, Something unclenched in my chest. We walked out with my home still mine. Justice doesn't bring back years lost to lies. But that day, it kept the roof over my head. I thought the worst part would be fighting banks and lenders. I was wrong. The worst part was what my husband's choices were about to do to my own children, and how his Fridays would force me to choose between protecting his memory and protecting my future winning in court didn't magically refill my retirement account. The debts tied to forged signatures were being peeled away, but the money Mark had actually lost was still gone. Vanished into a failed tech startup, disappeared into loans to friends who never paid back, burned through in 5 years of Friday cover-ups. At 63, I needed a job. I hadn't worked since I retired from the library 5 years earlier. Back then, I'd imagined book clubs and road trips with Mark. Lazy mornings with coffee and crossword puzzles. Visits with grandchildren without rushing back for anything. That version of retirement died the day I opened that storage unit. Now I was rewriting my life from scratch, and the first line was, I need income. A small community center near our house posted a hiring notice. Part-time front desk staff, $15 an hour. It wasn't much, but it was something. I printed my resume on paper that felt too fancy for what I was applying for, and I walked into that interview with the same navy blazer I'd worn to safekeep. The director was a woman in her 50s named Carol, with gray streaking through her dark hair and smile lines around her eyes. She read my resume, looked up at me and said, "You've got a gap here. 5 years. What were you doing?" I could have lied. Could have said traveling, volunteering, caring for family. Safe answers. Easy answers. But I was so tired of secrets. My husband died 7 months ago, I said. When he did, I learned he destroyed our finances behind my back. Fraud, forged signatures, hidden debts. I've spent the last several months fighting to keep my house. I just won in court, but I'm broke. I need this job because I'm trying not to lose everything. Carol blinked. Then she set down my resume and leaned forward. I'm sorry that happened to you, and I'm glad you fought. When can you start? I started the following Monday. Front desk, answering phones, helping seniors fill out forms for benefit programs, directing people to classes and workshops, restocking brochures, making coffee, small tasks, humble tasks. But every paycheck, even a small one, felt like proof I could survive this. 3 weeks into the job, a woman lingered after a budgeting workshop. She was probably in her early 50s, well-dressed, nervous energy radiating off her like heat. She kept glancing at the door like she was afraid someone might walk in. She said, twisting her wedding ring. Do you know anything about credit cards? I looked up from the desk. A little. What's going on? She sat down in the chair across from me, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. My husband handles everything. The bills, the accounts, all of it. But lately he gets angry if I ask questions. I used to see the statements, now I don't. I tried logging into our bank app last week and my password doesn't work anymore. He said he changed it for security reasons. Her nervous smile was painfully, achingly familiar. I'm probably overreacting, she added quickly. He says I worry too much. I heard Mark's voice in every word. You worry too much. Let me handle it. It's easier this way. I'm not a financial advisor, I said carefully. But I do know what it feels like when something doesn't add up. She looked at me with wide, hopeful eyes, like she'd been waiting for permission to trust her own instincts. Ask to see the statements, I said. Check your credit report. You can do it for free online. If everything is fine, you'll feel silly for a day and then you can relax. I paused. And if it's not fine? Her eyes filled with tears. Then you'll have caught it before it gets worse. She came back 2 weeks later, eyes swollen, hands shaking. He opened 2 cards in my name. She whispered, "Max them out." I never saw them. He's been getting the statements sent somewhere else. I don't know what to do. I gave her Angela Ruiz's card. That was the first woman I helped. She wasn't the last. Word spread quietly through the community center. There was a lady at the front desk who knew about hidden debts, who understood forged signatures, who wouldn't judge you for not knowing, who'd been through it herself. Women started asking me questions, quietly, in corners, after classes, in the bathroom, always with that same nervous glance over their shoulder. 1 month, I helped 3 different women request their credit reports. 2 of them found accounts they'd never opened. 1 found out her husband had taken out a loan against her car without telling her. The 3rd woman cried with relief when everything came back clean. False alarm, she said, laughing through tears. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid, I told her. You're careful, That's smart. 4 months after I started working at the community center, I had an idea. I asked Carol if I could use one of the meeting rooms once a month for a support group. Nothing official, just coffee, folding chairs, and conversation. What kind of group? She asked. For people dealing with financial abuse, I said. Or people who think they might be. Or people who got out and need to talk to someone who understands. Carol studied my face for a moment, then nodded. First Thursday of every month. Room B. It's yours. I didn't make flyers. Didn't post announcements. I just mentioned it quietly to the women who'd ask me questions. Told them they could come if they wanted. No pressure, no judgment, just space. The first meeting, I expected maybe 2 or 3 people. 8 women showed up. And 1 man. All of them clutching coffee cups like life rafts. All of them looking at the floor, the walls, anywhere but each other. I started by telling my story. Not to make Mark a villain. He wasn't a cartoon character. He was a human man who made cowardly choices again and again until those choices buried us both. I told them about the Fridays, the storage unit, the forged signatures, the letter, the court. I told them about Emily refusing to speak to me because she couldn't reconcile the father she loved with the man who committed fraud. I told them the truth. I didn't stay strong. I cried. I got angry. I was terrified. Strength wasn't a feeling. It was a decision I made every single morning when I got out of bed. The decision not to let his choices be the last word on my life. When I finished, the room was silent. Then a woman in her 40s raised her hand like we were in school. How did you know it was abuse? She asked. I keep thinking maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I should have paid more attention. Maybe it's my fault for being stupid about money. I leaned forward. Let me ask you something. Did you choose not to see the statements, or did someone make sure you couldn't? She blinked. He changed the passwords. He said it was easier if he handled everything. That's not you being stupid. That's someone taking your access away and calling it help. Nods around the circle, murmurs of recognition. Me too. Same thing happened to me. I thought I was the only one. We talked for 2 hours that night, shared lawyer names, shared scripts for hard conversations, shared the truth nobody wanted to say out loud. Love without honesty isn't protection. Control disguised as care is still control. By the second meeting, we had 12 people. By the fourth, 22, women and men, young and old. Some in the middle of the fight, some just starting to ask questions. Some years out, but still needing to talk to people who understood. And me? I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a guide. Someone who'd walked through the fire and come out the other side with a map. On what would have been my 36th wedding anniversary, I did something I'd been thinking about for weeks. I went to a different bank. Not the one where Mark had opened secret loans. Not the one that had fought me in court. A new bank. A clean slate. I sat across from a young woman with kind eyes and said, I'd like to open an account in my name only. She printed the forms. Name, Laura Jenkins. I stared at it for a long moment, pen hovering over the line. Actually, I said slowly, can I use my maiden name? Laura Morgan. Of course, she said, reprinting the form without hesitation. I signed it, Laura Morgan, the name I'd had before I became someone's wife, before I let someone else handle the boring stuff, before 35 years of Fridays I never questioned. Taking my old name back wasn't about erasing Mark. It wasn't about pretending our marriage didn't happen or that our kids didn't exist. It was about reclaiming the person I'd been before his secrets rearranged my life, the person I was becoming after. As I walked out of that bank with my new debit card, the sky was beginning to clear after days of rain. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like my future wasn't something someone else was handling for me. It was something I was building, one honest step at a time. A year after Mark died, I got a call from Emily. We hadn't spoken in months. She'd missed Thanksgiving, skipped Christmas, sent Daniel a text on my birthday, but nothing to me directly. When her name lit up my phone, my heart jumped into my throat. Mom? Her voice was small, uncertain. Can I come over? Of course, I said. She arrived an hour later, carrying a folder. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She'd lost weight. There were new lines around her mouth I didn't remember. We sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd spread out the safekeep documents a year ago. The same table where Daniel and I had gone through Mark's lies piece by piece. Emily set the folder on the table but didn't open it right away. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For not believing you. For hanging up. For shutting you out. You don't have to... No, she interrupted. I do. I spent a year telling myself you were wrong. That grief made you see things that weren't there. That Dad was a good man and you were just angry. She took a shaky breath. Then I found these. She opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, letters addressed to Mark at an address I didn't recognize, another P.O. box, not safekeep, somewhere else. I found them when I was cleaning out the garage at Dad's old office, she said. He had a storage unit there too. I didn't know. Daniel didn't know. Nobody knew. How much? I asked quietly. 30,000. Another credit card. Another investment gone bad. Another secret. Emily's hands were shaking. You were right, Mom. About all of it. And I'm so sorry I made you go through that alone. I reached across the table and took her hand. You weren't ready to see it. That's not your fault. She cried then. Really cried. The kind of crying that comes from losing someone twice. Once to death. Once to the truth. After she left, I sat in the quiet house and felt something shift. Not closure. I'm not sure that word means anything real. But maybe acceptance. Emily and I would rebuild. Slowly. Carefully. Like learning to walk on a broken ankle that didn't heal quite right. The support group kept growing. By month 6, we'd outgrown Room B. Carol moved us to the main hall. We started meeting twice a month. I brought in guest speakers, a credit counselor, a family lawyer, a therapist who specialized in financial abuse. One night, a woman named Patricia stood up during sharing time. She was in her 70s, silver hair, bright eyes, a floral scarf tied around her neck. I've been coming here for 4 months, she said. And I finally worked up the courage to do what Laura did. I checked my credit report. The room went silent. My son, she said, her voice shaking. My son has been using my information to open accounts for 3 years. I didn't know. He's my baby. How do I report my own child? The room erupted. Not with judgment, with recognition, with shared pain. Half a dozen people said me too. My brother, my daughter, my mother. Financial abuse didn't just happen in marriages. It happened in families, in friendships, anywhere trust could be weaponized. You don't have to decide tonight, I told Patricia gently. But you do have to protect yourself. Love doesn't require you to go bankrupt. She nodded, tears streaming. But she stayed. And the next month, she came back and told us she'd frozen her credit and confronted her son. He'd been angry, defensive, accused her of not trusting him. I told him trust is earned, not demanded, she said, and he'll have to earn it back. The room applauded, not because confrontation is easy, because surviving it is brave. I started getting emails, women from other cities who'd heard about the group, asking how to start one in their town, asking for resources, asking if I'd speak at their church, their community center, their women's shelter. I wasn't a public speaker. I was a widow who'd stumbled into advocacy because the alternative was letting Mark's lies be the end of my story. But people kept asking, so I kept saying yes. I spoke at a women's shelter in the next county, told my story, answered questions. A woman in her 30s approached me afterward. My husband died 6 months ago, she said. I just found out he took out loans I didn't know about. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was the only one. You're not, I said. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And it's not your fault. She hugged me, a stranger, holding on like I was a lighthouse in the storm. On my 64th birthday, Daniel and Emily took me to dinner. A nice restaurant, candlelight, white tablecloths, the kind of place Mark always said was too expensive. We ordered appetizers, laughed over shared memories, talked about Emily's job, Daniel's kids, my group at the community center. Then Emily raised her glass. To Mom, she said, the strongest woman I know. Daniel raised his. To Mom, who taught us that strength isn't never falling down. It's getting back up. We clinked glasses, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was fixed. My retirement was still depleted. I still worked part-time at 64. Emily and I still had hard days where Mark's ghost sat between us. But I had my house, my name, my voice, and a room full of people every month who needed to hear that survival was possible. That was enough. 2 years after Mark's death, I got a letter from Safekeep. They were closing down, consolidating locations. Did I want to keep paying for Unit 3 F27? I didn't even hesitate. No. Close it. I didn't need that space anymore. Didn't need the boxes or the files or the evidence of what Mark had done. I had copies. I had proof. I had everything I needed for my story. But I didn't need to keep a shrine to his secrets. I drove there one last time. Walked down that hallway with the gray doors and the numbers. Opened 3F27 for the last time. It was empty. I'd taken everything months ago, but I stood there for a moment anyway, looking at that small, cold space. 35 years of Fridays, all leading here. To an empty storage unit and a widow who refused to disappear. I locked the door, turned in my key, and walked out into the sunlight. I never went back. If you're listening to this story and something in your chest has been tight since the first sentence, this part is for you. Maybe your partner handles all the money stuff. Maybe they tell you you're too stressed already to worry about bills. Maybe you used to see statements and now you don't. Maybe there's a locked drawer, a private email, a Friday ritual you're not invited into. Maybe you feel silly even thinking about it, paranoid, ungrateful, like you're betraying someone you love by asking questions. Listen to me very carefully. That feeling is not paranoia. It's your mind knocking on the door of a room someone told you never to open, and you have every right to open that door. Love does not require blindness. Trust is not the same as surrender. Partnership means you get to see the full picture, not just the parts someone decides to show you. You are allowed to see the statements. You are allowed to know the passwords. You are allowed to understand what's being done in your name. Those aren't demands. Those aren't accusations. Those are rights. If everything is fine, you'll have one awkward conversation, and maybe a night of embarrassed laughter. You'll apologize for doubting. You'll move on. That's the best case scenario, and it's worth the discomfort. But if it's not fine, if you open that door and find boxes of secrets like I did, then you've caught the fire before it burned your whole life down. You've given yourself a chance to fight back while you still have options. Here's what I wish someone had told me 35 years ago. Financial abuse is real. It's not dramatic. It's not always obvious. It doesn't announce itself with sirens and red flags. It creeps in disguised as care, as protection, as someone doing you a favor by handling the boring stuff. It sounds like I'll take care of it. Don't worry your pretty head. You're too kind for this. Let me protect you from the stress. It looks like statements that stop arriving, passwords that suddenly change, questions that get met with anger, defensiveness, or dismissal. It feels like walking through your own life on someone else's map, never quite sure where you are or where you're going, but trusting that the person holding the compass loves you enough not to lead you off a cliff. Until one day you realize you're already falling. I'm not telling you to distrust everyone. I'm not saying every partner who handles finances is abusive. I'm saying that in a healthy relationship, transparency isn't a threat. Questions aren't betrayals, and access to your own financial information isn't something you have to beg for. If you're in the middle of this right now, if you just found the storage unit, or the secret account, or the forged signature with your name on it, hear this. You are not stupid for trusting. You are not naive for believing someone you loved. You are not responsible for choices someone else made in secret. What they did was wrong, legally wrong, morally wrong, ethically wrong. It doesn't matter how much they loved you. It doesn't matter what their intentions were. It doesn't matter if they were trying to fix it. The impact is what matters. And the impact on you is real. But here's the other thing I need you to hear. You are not doomed. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not defined by someone else's lies. What you do next, that part is still yours. You can check your credit report, you can talk to a lawyer, you can freeze your accounts, you can tell someone what's happening, you can fight. And if you're scared, if you don't know where to start, find someone who's been there. A support group, a hotline, a friend who'll believe you. You don't have to do this alone. I spent 35 years letting someone else hold the map. Then I spent 2 years learning to draw my own. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fast. There were days I wanted to quit. Days I wanted to crawl into bed and let the foreclosure notices pile up and the credit score crater and the world decide what happened to me. But I didn't. I got up. I made phone calls. I fought banks and lawyers and my own daughter's disbelief. I went from the woman who didn't know to the woman other people come to when they need someone who understands. You can do that too. Not because you're special or brave or stronger than you think, but because survival is a series of small choices. Get out of bed. Make the call. Open the envelope. Ask the question. One step, then another, then another. And eventually you look back and realize you've walked miles. My husband's Fridays almost took everything from me. My house, my credit, my future, my relationship with my daughter. But they didn't. Because I decided they wouldn't. Because I decided his secrets didn't get to be the last chapter of my story. Now I stand in rooms full of people who are writing their own next chapters. People who are scared and angry and grieving and fighting. People who are learning that love without honesty is a beautiful prison. And freedom, even when it's hard, is worth it. If this story feels a little too close to home, If you recognize yourself in my 35 years of Fridays, let this be the moment. The moment you stop closing your eyes and start turning on the lights. Check your credit report. It's free. You can do it right now. Go to annualcreditreport.com. Look at what's in your name. Look at what you didn't know about. And if something's wrong, if there's an account you never opened or a loan you never signed, don't explain it away. Don't justify it. Don't let anyone tell you you're overreacting. Trust that tight feeling in your chest. It's trying to save you. And if you're listening to this and you've already fought your battle, if you're on the other side like me, tell your story. Not for revenge, not to shame anyone, but because someone out there needs to hear that survival is possible, that life after betrayal is real, that you can lose everything and still build something beautiful from what's left. Your future is too important to leave in a box you never have the key to. So take the key, open the box, look at what's inside, and decide what happens next. Because that choice, that power, that voice, those are yours. They always were. Someone just convinced you to give them away. Take them back. If my story helped you, if it gave you the courage to ask one question or make one phone call or check one statement, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. Tell me you're fighting. Tell me you survived. Tell me you're not alone. Because you're not. None of us are. And together, we're rewriting the ending. My name is Laura Morgan. I was married for 35 years to a man who went to the post office every Friday at 3:15. Except he didn't. He went somewhere else, somewhere secret. And when I finally found out where, it almost destroyed me. But almost isn't the same as did. And that difference, that tiny space between almost and actually, that's where I learned to live again. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Stories of people who fought back, who rebuilt, who refused to let someone else's choices be the end. And remember, the boring stuff is never just boring. If someone won't let you see it, there's a reason. Find out what it is before it's too late.